Hello and welcome back to English in Fluency. I'm your host, Alex. Now, before we dive into today's topic, which is going to be a deep, liberating journey, I want you to do something a little different. Take a moment, right now, wherever you are, and notice. Just notice the one thing you feel you should be doing that you're not. Maybe it's sending an email, checking a work message, or starting a chore. Hold that thought, that little whisper of guilt, for just a moment. That feeling is the invisible thread we're going to gently untangle today. This is B1 English listening practice, so I'll be speaking clearly, using vocabulary and structures that are perfect for consolidating your intermediate level English. Listen closely, not just to the words, but to the ideas, because today we are going to challenge a universal habit. The to-do list. Have you ever noticed how incredibly satisfying it feels to tick something off your to-do list? That tiny check mark, that quick swipe on an app, that moment when a task disappears from your screen. It feels good, doesn't it? It's almost like a small private victory, a flash of success that nobody else sees. We immediately tell ourselves, yes, I'm being productive. I'm in control of my life. I'm handling my responsibilities. But I want you to pause with me right here and ask a deeply important question. What does that feeling really mean? Is it genuine progress? Or is it just a comforting illusion of progress? A psychological trick our brains play on us? Everywhere you look, the to-do list is celebrated. It's presented as a badge of discipline and control. In every office, in every sophisticated productivity app, even on social media, people proudly share their complex, color-coded systems and bullet journals as if organization itself were a form of profound enlightenment or spiritual success. We have been conditioned, we have been taught, that the more we plan, the more control we supposedly have over our lives. We've come to believe that a full, tightly scheduled calendar equals a full, meaningful life. But here is the central, radical question I want to explore with you over the next hour. What if the opposite is true? What if our modern, frantic obsession with trying to manage every single second of our time is actually quietly, relentlessly managing us? Think about your own day, right now. Maybe you start your morning already scrolling through tasks on your phone, mentally checking what urgently needs to be done before you've even had breakfast. You might cross off a few quick items, feel that brief, addictive hit of satisfaction, but then you immediately add 2 or 3 more tasks, and somehow the list never truly ends. It grows faster than you can possibly keep up with. You go to bed feeling that strange, crushing mixture of exhaustion and guilt. Exhausted because you did too much, and guilty because you still didn't manage to do enough. It's a vicious, self-defeating cycle. It is as if your entire sense of personal worth, your value as a human being, depends on how many things you have successfully accomplished today, rather than on how deeply, how consciously, or how meaningfully you have lived the moments between those tasks. The to-do list has evolved from being just a simple tool, a reminder, into a profound cultural ritual, a symbol of being a together person, someone who is truly on top of things. We are constantly told that if we can just get organized enough, we will finally feel a sense of peace. But think about it. Peace doesn't live on paper, does it? It's not something you can tick off like buy groceries or reply to 3 emails. Peace, presence, connection, joy, these aren't simply tasks. They are fundamental states of being. And yet, we treat them like items we can schedule for 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, as if meaning itself could be managed or controlled. Now, don't misunderstand me. Lists aren't evil or inherently bad. They absolutely help us remember things. They help us structure our week, and they are useful for prioritizing major projects. But somewhere along the path of modern life, we've started using them not just to manage our tasks, but tragically, to measure ourselves. We look at that perpetually unfinished list, and we feel like we have failed. It's as if the unchecked boxes, the things we didn't get to, are undeniable proof of our personal inadequacy, our lack of discipline. And that, my friends, is the deep, costly myth that I want to completely challenge today. The dangerous idea that productivity automatically equals purpose, or that simply being busy equals having value. So, before we go any further into the psychology of all this, I'd like you to ask yourself something very personal. When was the last time you did something, anything at all? Not because it was an item on your rigid list, but simply because it felt right in the moment. Maybe you deliberately lingered over a warm, thoughtful conversation instead of rushing it to get to the next appointment. Perhaps you took a walk without tracking your steps, without listening to a podcast, without looking at your phone. Or maybe, most bravely, you allowed yourself to do absolutely nothing for 15 minutes, not out of laziness, but out of a simple, deep trust in yourself. These quiet, unscheduled moments, I promise you, often reveal a much deeper, more nourishing kind of productivity. The kind that truly nourishes your inner world, your soul, your creativity, rather than just filling up the boxes on your calendar. In this very special, expanded episode of English in Fluency, we're going to gently unpack this myth, taking our time and going into great detail. We will explore exactly why we cling to our to-do lists so tightly, what this reliance says about our inner dialogue and our deep-seated fears, and, most importantly, how we can begin to live and learn English, and simply live life, without being completely ruled by the tyranny of the checklist. So, take a truly deep breath, metaphorically put your list aside for the duration of this episode, and let's begin this journey. Let's start by taking a much closer look at why we love our to-do lists so much. I mean, not just the practical reasons, like remembering to buy milk, but the profound, subtle psychological reasons. Because it truly isn't just about the practical act of getting things done, is it? There's something much, much deeper, something almost emotional and chemical, going on beneath the surface of that piece of paper or that app screen. Every single time we successfully cross something off that list, our brains immediately reward us. Quite literally. That tiny, momentary burst of satisfaction you feel when you tick a box, or when you delete a completed task from an app, that is a chemical event called a dopamine release. Dopamine is a powerful neurotransmitter that is fundamentally linked to pleasure, motivation, and learning. It is the exact same chemical that lights up the reward centers in your brain when you receive a like on social media, or when you find a surprisingly good deal online, or when you successfully complete a level in a video game. Our brains are essentially wired to crave that small, instantaneous burst of accomplishment. It feels like undeniable proof that we are moving forward, that we are effective, that we are in control, even if the progress is, in reality, purely symbolic, like a 5-minute task. But here is the incredibly tricky and expensive part of this brain wiring. The more frequently we chase that small hit of immediate satisfaction, the more psychologically dependent we can become on external validation. We slowly, unconsciously start to measure our entire personal worth in terms of the number of completed tasks, rather than in the quality, depth, or meaning of our actual experiences. It's like accidentally training yourself to only feel enough, or only feel worthy, when you are physically doing something, when you are in motion. Over time, this chase can subtly transform into an addiction, what we might call the productivity rush. We become perpetually restless whenever we are still, deeply uncomfortable in the quiet, unscheduled spaces of our own minds. Instead of truly resting, reflecting, or simply being, we instinctively reach for the next task, the next tick, the next little dopamine spark. We constantly tell ourselves we're being efficient and dedicated, but what we might really be doing is simply soothing a low-level, continuous background anxiety. This craving for a continuous state of completion, this need to always be finishing something, ties into something much bigger and much more pervasive. Our entire cultural story about what it truly means to be a successful person. From a very early age, many of us are taught, explicitly or implicitly, that achievement equals inherent worth. We are heavily rewarded for results, universally praised for being busy, and often deeply admired for being masters of multitasking. The phrase, "keep yourself busy," becomes both common advice and a subtle implied warning, as if stillness, reflection, or rest were a definitive form of personal failure or a moral lapse. We grow up fundamentally believing that if we're not constantly doing something, we must be wasting our precious time. That powerful belief follows us relentlessly into adulthood, shaping how we meticulously structure our days and even how we talk about ourselves to others. Let's think about this. When someone casually asks you, "How are you doing?" How often does the quick, automatic reply become the single word, "busy"? It's fascinating, and actually quite sad, how easily we accept this mindset. We start to wear our exhaustion like a physical medal, a visible proof that we are working hard, pushing forward, staying relevant, and being an important member of society. But beneath that exterior, there is often a quiet, profound exhaustion, a deep sense of constantly running on fumes, of chasing our own tail and getting nowhere. And what's worse, this constant state of doing can unintentionally become a shield, a form of defense, protecting us from uncomfortable emotions or the deeper, existential questions about meaning in our lives. If we manage to stay busy enough, if we fill every single moment, we don't have to face our self-doubts, our deepest fears, or that lingering, quiet feeling that maybe, just maybe, all this frantic motion is not actually leading us where we truly want to go. The to-do list, in this critical sense, offers the potent illusion of control. It gives us the false sense that life can be perfectly managed, that if we just plan well enough and meticulously enough, absolutely nothing will ever slip through the cracks. But life, as we both know from experience, doesn't always cooperate with our plans. People change, sometimes suddenly. Circumstances shift dramatically. Our own emotions fluctuate wildly and unpredictably. And no matter how incredibly long, detailed, and perfectly organized your list is, there will always be something you didn't anticipate. An unexpected problem, a sudden, powerful inspiration, a moment of deep loss, or an unexpected, profound moment of love. The profound irony is that the more tightly we try to hold on to the illusion of control, the more fragile and easily broken that control ultimately becomes. This dynamic is incredibly powerful and, yes, dangerous, because it constantly reinforces our limiting, untrue beliefs about personal success and self-value. If I fundamentally believe, deep down, that I'm only good enough when I am actively achieving, then every unfinished task on the list immediately becomes a small, personal failure. Every lazy, spontaneous afternoon becomes a genuine threat to my self-identity. It's like having an invisible secret scoreboard running constantly in your mind, meticulously tallying up wins and losses that absolutely no one else can see. The inner dialogue that results is relentless and often harsh. You should be doing more. You're falling behind. You're not organized enough. These thoughts sound deceptively rational, even responsible, but they quietly and continuously drain our deep-seated sense of joy and extinguish our creative fire. They keep us stuck perpetually on autopilot, tragically mistaking constant motion for genuine, deep-rooted personal growth. And let's be honest, our society financially and culturally rewards this exact behavior. We are entirely surrounded by the cult of productivity culture. Books promising to help us hack our mornings, apps that track every single minute of our day, podcasts urging us to maximize every single second of our waking life. But the undeniable truth is that life is not a spreadsheet. We absolutely cannot optimize our way to meaning or connection. Sometimes, the most valuable, meaning-making moments are the ones that simply do not fit neatly onto a list. The spontaneous, unexpected conversation, the quiet, reflective walk, the brilliant idea that only comes when you finally stop trying so hard to force yourself to think. So maybe, just maybe, it's time to ask a completely different kind of question. Not, what do I need to do today? But, why am I doing what I'm doing at all? When we slow down just enough to truly listen to that question, we begin to see that productivity, in its healthiest and most authentic form, is absolutely not about speed or quantity. It is, fundamentally, about alignment. It's about moving through the world in ways that accurately reflect who we truly are, not who we think the world expects us to be. And that is exactly where we'll go next, into the much deeper, hidden cost of this constant doing, and what genuinely happens when our intense need to control every moment ultimately begins to control us. But for now, take another deep breath. Physically step away from your list for just a second. Notice the quiet, small feeling of simply being, without the external or internal pressure to immediately achieve. Maybe that single moment is the very first step in successfully rewriting your own personal psychology of productivity. Let's be brutally honest. Most of us are constantly, perpetually doing something. Even when we are not physically active, our minds are ticking away relentlessly in the background, continuously scanning through what's next, what's unfinished, and what needs immediate fixing. It's as if genuine silence or stillness itself has become profoundly uncomfortable, even slightly threatening. We compulsively fill every pause, every gap in our day with activity, or at the very least, with the anxious thought of activity. But have you ever truly stopped to ask yourself, with sincerity, what is the enormous, real, long-term cost of living this frantic way, when every single moment is scheduled and every breath of air feels like an urgent item on a list? What exactly are we truly, deeply losing? One of the first and most obvious costs is something we all recognize but rarely speak about openly. Burnout. It doesn't happen suddenly, overnight. It creeps in quietly and slowly, often cleverly disguised as ambition, diligence, or necessary responsibility. You start by pushing yourself just a little harder, telling yourself firmly that it's only temporary, that you will finally rest once things calm down. But that quiet moment, that promised calm, rarely ever comes, does it? The to-do list seems to refill itself as quickly as you empty it. And before very long, you realize you're running on emotional, mental, and physical fumes, physically present in your life, but emotionally and mentally drained to zero. You wake up already tired, you go through the necessary motions of the day, and you start measuring your 24 hours only by how much you got through, rather than by how much you authentically experienced. And it's not just the physical exhaustion that hits us, it's also something called decision fatigue. Every single choice we make throughout the day, from answering a work email to deciding what to cook for dinner, demands a precious amount of mental energy. When our days are constantly crammed with a relentless stream of minor and major decisions, our brains never truly get a chance to switch off and rest. It is no wonder that by the evening, even simple, tiny choices, like whether to go for a brief walk or what movie to watch, can feel overwhelmingly difficult. We end up defaulting to easy habitual options, not because we are lazy, but simply because our cognitive batteries are completely empty. The profound truth is that the human mind is not structurally built to operate in perpetual, continuous high gear. It desperately needs stillness, emptiness, and quiet time to recharge, to make unexpected connections, and to create deep personal meaning. And that brings us to the next, related cost, perhaps the most subtle and utterly devastating of all, the slow, insidious erosion of creativity and presence. Creativity does not and cannot thrive on pressure, urgency, or obligation. It thrives on space. Think about those incredible, aha moments of inspiration you've had in the past. They probably came when your mind was happily wandering, not when you were frantically multitasking. Maybe it was during a long, aimless walk, or while taking a quiet shower, or simply while staring thoughtfully out of a window. That's because creativity fundamentally lives in the spaces between tasks, in the unscheduled moments where your brain has the permission to breathe, to play, and to explore an idea without constantly being told what it must do or what it must produce. Presence works in the exact same way as creativity. You simply cannot schedule presence. You can only allow it to emerge. When we live in a constant state of doing, we tragically stop truly noticing the world and the people around us. We rush through meals without genuinely tasting the food, through conversations without deeply listening to the person speaking, through our own personal achievements without allowing ourselves to fully feel the joy. Life slowly starts to feel like a constant, high-speed blur. Busy, yes, full of motion, but also strangely hollow. You might often find yourself lying in bed at night wondering why, despite everything you successfully got done, something still feels profoundly missing. That emptiness is not a sign of personal failure. It is a powerful signal. It is your inner voice gently reminding you that doing and living are fundamentally not the same thing. And yet, slowing down, truly slowing down, can feel almost rebellious in our current society. In a world that only celebrates blinding speed and endless production, we are constantly surrounded by toxic messages that actively glorify productivity. Hustle harder. No days off. Sleep when you're dead. Rest is often shamefully mistaken for weakness or laziness, when, in reality, it is one of the deepest, most necessary forms of wisdom. To pause, to breathe, to look at the list, and simply say, "Not today, not right now." That is not laziness. That is an act of deep personal alignment. It is choosing to listen to your body, your mind, and your intuition, rather than to the constant, loud hum of external expectations and social pressure. This, of course, is not easy work. Many of us carry powerful, invisible beliefs that tell us we must always be achieving, always be proving, to be worthy of love or success. Maybe it's a belief we absorbed from our family, our culture, or our demanding workplace. Maybe it's just the pervasive fear of falling behind our peers. But the undeniable truth is this: you cannot outrun total exhaustion by simply doing more. You can only heal it by being more present, by giving yourself explicit permission to exist outside of the demanding framework of tasks, to feel what you feel, to breathe consciously, to notice your surroundings, to just be. So, let me ask you something specific, and take a moment to truly think about your answer. When do you genuinely allow yourself to just be, without a hidden agenda, without a goal? Not because it's marked as Self-Care Sunday in your calendar, but simply because you truly trust that you don't need to perpetually earn your rest. Imagine sitting quietly, maybe with a warm cup of tea, your phone completely out of reach, no music playing, no notifications buzzing. How long, specifically, before the deep-seated urge to do something, anything, kicks in? That tiny feeling of discomfort is worth paying close attention to, because it shows precisely how deeply we have been culturally conditioned to equate stillness with frightening stagnation. But here is the profound paradox we must understand. Stillness is not the opposite of growth. It is, in fact, the essential foundation of it. Just like a seed needs the darkness and quiet of the soil before it can sprout into life, our minds need space, rest, and emptiness before they can truly imagine, create, or learn. The moments we spend actively not doing are often the very moments when we start the important work of simply becoming. So, perhaps the very next time you feel that irresistible urge to fill every single gap in your day, pause instead. Take one very deep, intentional breath and gently remind yourself, life is not a never-ending list to complete. It is an immense, vibrant experience to deeply inhabit. And perhaps the most productive, most valuable thing you can do for yourself today is to step out of the cycle of constant doing and quietly remember what it feels like to simply exist. The real work, the deep work, begins there, in the silence. Now, let's turn the bright spotlight inward for a moment, because this is where the core of today's lesson lies. Beneath the surface of our daily routines, the scheduling, the planning, the ticking off of boxes, there is usually something much, much deeper at play. It's not just about staying organized or being practically efficient. It's about what those things silently mean to us on an emotional and philosophical level. The profound truth is that our specific relationship with productivity almost always reveals our deeper, more complicated relationship with ourselves. The to-do list might look like a simple, harmless external tool, but it is, in fact, often a mirror reflecting our intense, relentless internal dialogue. That quiet, constant, judgmental voice that tells us who we are and, more dangerously, who we believe we should be. Ask yourself this question And be honest. When you rush to finish something, anything, what is the true, deep motivation that is really driving you? Is it genuine, pure enthusiasm, or is it a deep-seated fear? Maybe it's the universal fear of falling behind your peers, the fear of being seen as lazy, or the fear of being perceived as unmotivated by others. Or perhaps it's that subtle, absolutely relentless whisper that says, if I just do one more thing, if I just achieve one more success, I'll finally, for once and for all, feel enough. This inner voice, this relentless internal critic, has been shaped by years of expectations from family, from school, from our workplace, and from society at large. It becomes the invisible, high-powered engine behind our to-do list obsession. It subtly but forcefully convinces us that our self-worth depends entirely on our quantifiable output, and that true, lasting peace must somehow be earned through maximum, continuous productivity. And so, without even truly realizing the cost, we start living our lives entirely in service of that voice. Perfectionism is often the biggest saboteur, cleverly hiding behind this type of behavior. On the surface, it looks commendable, like pure dedication, a drive for excellence, or having incredibly high standards. But real perfectionism is not actually about doing things well. It is fundamentally about fear, the crushing fear of not being enough, the fear of being exposed as a fraud, or the fear of completely losing control. Every single item on your list silently becomes a test. Every small delay or setback becomes a tiny personal failure. And the list, consequently, never, ever truly ends. Because the real, hidden goal is not to finish the tasks. The real goal is to constantly prove something to yourself, or to the world. It is a kind of psychological hamster wheel. No matter how fast or how frantically you run, you never actually arrive at enough. You are constantly chasing approval, external validation, or a fleeting sense of peace that never lasts for very long. And this chase, this relentless pursuit of impossible perfection, has a severe hidden cost. It keeps us firmly trapped in an internal cycle of continuous self-criticism. That inner dialogue becomes harsh, demanding, and utterly impatient. You probably recognize that voice, the one that says, "You should be doing more. You're wasting time. That's not good enough." Sometimes it sounds rational, even helpful, as if it's genuinely pushing you toward success. But in reality, it is often deep-seated anxiety wearing a convincing mask of high ambition. It's that subtle, constant pressure to prove your worth, to keep up with the world, to stay relevant, and to be seen as effortlessly capable. The final irony, which is the most heartbreaking, is that the more we actually listen to and obey this demanding inner critic, the less we actually hear our true selves. So, what is the deep underlying need beneath that compulsion to be on top of things all the time? Maybe it's a desperate desire for safety, the feeling that if absolutely everything is under your control, nothing in the world can truly hurt you. Maybe it's about identity, about being the dependable one, the superachiever, the one who never drops the ball in a crisis. Or maybe, most commonly, it's a sophisticated way of actively avoiding discomfort. Because if you successfully stay busy enough, you don't have to face life's genuine uncertainty, or the sting of a personal loss, or the quiet ache of loneliness. In this deep philosophical sense, the to-do list can become a form of emotional armor. It gives comforting structure to overwhelming chaos and predictable security to frightening fear. It is comforting, but it also tragically prevents you from doing the deeper, more necessary work of asking, what am I genuinely feeling right now? What am I truly chasing in this moment? Sometimes, what we are chasing is not success at all. It is relief. Relief from the constant low hum of self-doubt. Relief from the guilt of not being productive enough. Relief from the anxiety that we are somehow not measuring up to an external standard. The list becomes our primary coping mechanism. Every successfully completed task feels like a small, temporary reassurance. See? You're okay. You're doing fine. Keep going. But that reassurance, as we know, fades quickly, doesn't it? By the end of the day, the list is immediately refilled, and the exhausting cycle begins again. It is a painful emotional loop that keeps us busy, but very rarely truly fulfilled. Now, let's try a small listening practice segment together. I'm going to use a metaphor, and I want you to listen carefully and visualize it. Try to understand the feeling the metaphor creates. Alex, I want you to picture your entire life as an imaginary scoreboard, a giant electronic screen that only you can personally see. Every single achievement, every success, every completed task immediately lights up a new point on this scoreboard. But here's the cruel catch. The rules of the game keep subtly changing, and the goalposts keep continuously moving further away. No matter how much you accomplish, no matter how many points you score, the scoreboard never truly feels full. That is exactly what happens when we tie our deep internal sense of personal worth to performance and continuous output. The game never ends. But what if, just for a moment, you intentionally turn that scoreboard completely off? What if your entire sense of value came not from how much you do, but from how deeply you exist? How honestly you show up in your relationships? How kindly you treat yourself? How courageously you choose to live your own truth? So, I repeat my question to you. What are you really chasing? Is it external success, or is it internal peace? Is it public recognition, or is it quiet self-acceptance? The very next time you feel that powerful rush to accomplish, to control, to tick one more box, pause immediately and deeply listen. Beneath the loud noise of busyness, there is usually a much quieter, deeper longing for meaning, connection, or simple rest. And that genuine longing does not need to be managed or completed. It just needs to be patiently heard. Because maybe the true, deep goal of life isn't to conquer your to-do list, but rather to make peace with the part of you that strongly believes you have to. Let's take a deep breath together right now and imagine, just for a moment, a fundamentally different way of living. Imagine waking up in the morning without immediately reaching for your phone or frantically scanning your mental list of things to do. Instead, you pause, you stretch, you breathe, and you ask yourself one simple guiding question. How do I want to show up today? Not what do I need to do, but who do I want to be? It sounds almost too simple, but that small, subtle shift, the pivot from doing to being, has the immense power to change the entire rhythm, the entire texture of your life. For most of us, productivity has been rigidly defined by doing. It's been all about output, efficiency, and visible, measurable results. We are taught to measure our personal worth in completed tasks, to continuously prove our value through quantifiable action. But what if the only true sustainable productivity is not about doing more? What if it's actually about being more present in whatever we choose to do? What if it's less about obsessively managing time and much, much more about deeply aligning with our personal intention? Imagine, for this next phase of the lesson, trading the endless, anxious ticking of a clock for the quiet, steady guidance of a compass. A clock tells you how fast you are moving. A compass gently reminds you where you are truly headed. That is the entire difference between living reactively, constantly responding to external pressures, and living consciously, making deliberate, intentional choices. When we are hopelessly caught up in constant doing, we often move very quickly but also very blindly, always reacting to external pressures, obligations, and the expectations of others. Our actions become automatic habits that we mistakenly dress up as conscious choices. We rush frantically from one thing to another, not because the next thing is meaningful, but simply because it is familiar and expected. But when we successfully shift our mindset into being, our behavior starts to flow from a place of deep awareness rather than from a place of ingrained habit. We pause momentarily before we act. We make choices based on our deepest purpose, not external pressure. We stop running on that hamster wheel and start listening carefully to our body, to our intuition, to the quiet, internal voice that truly knows when to move and when it is time to rest. This shift is not about rejecting action or abandoning your responsibilities. It is about restoring a profound sense of balance. The delicate, necessary balance between intense effort and simple ease, between striving for a goal and gracefully surrendering to the process. Think of your life as a long, complex piece of music. If every single note were played at a maximum, frantic speed with absolutely no rests, the melody would immediately collapse into shapeless noise. It is the pauses, the moments of silence and stillness, that give music its essential shape, its deep emotion, and its ultimate meaning. The exact same principle is true for us. We desperately need the pauses to reconnect with what truly matters, to remember the deeper why behind what we are doing. Otherwise, our days become busy but entirely hollow, full of sound and motion, but completely lacking in harmony. And let's be absolutely clear. Choosing being does not mean abandoning your life goals. It means approaching them from a completely different, much healthier place, a place of inner clarity instead of sheer compulsion. You still write the important report, send the crucial email, make the necessary call, but you do it with gentle awareness, not crippling anxiety. You stop chasing outcomes and start instead cultivating deep, intentional presence. When you are fully engaged, when you are truly present, even the most ordinary, mundane actions, washing the dishes, answering messages, walking to work, can suddenly feel grounded, fully alive, and deeply meaningful. Presence has the transformative power to change the mundane into something almost sacred. Of course, this profound shift is not easy. We live in a world that universally celebrates busyness. Slowing down can feel like swimming strongly against a very powerful current. People might even judge you for it. Or, much worse, you might start judging yourself. That inner critic might whisper, "You're wasting time. Get moving." But here is the final paradox. When you act from a place of true presence, you often end up being significantly more effective, not less. Because internal clarity always cuts cleanly through confusion. When your mind is calm and settled, you consistently make better decisions. When your actions flow from a deep sense of purpose, you waste less precious energy on things that don't truly matter. The key to this shift lies in intention, not the grand, long-term strategic kind, but the moment-to-moment awareness of why you are doing something right now. Before you even open your laptop, ask yourself, what is my intention right now? Am I working out of fear or out of curiosity? Am I saying yes to this request because I genuinely mean it, or because I'm simply afraid to disappoint someone? These small, powerful check-ins anchor you in a state of being. They remind you that your life is not a simple list to complete. It is a profound, messy, beautiful journey to fully inhabit. Now, for a practical exercise, let's go a bit deeper into this idea of intentionality. Alex, I want you to try something tomorrow. Set aside just 1 hour. It could be a morning, a lunch break, or an evening hour. During that hour, you are going to practice the hour of no list. No checking the to-do list. No looking at your phone for new messages. No planning. Instead, when you start the hour, ask yourself, what one thing could I do right now that would most align with my value of growth, or connection, or joy? If you choose growth, maybe you decide to read 1 chapter of a book, or spend 20 minutes practicing a difficult English grammar point without worrying about a deadline. If you choose connection, you might make a deliberate, slow, present-moment cup of tea for yourself or a colleague, and then spend 15 minutes truly listening to someone, giving them your full, undivided attention. The action itself is not what matters. The intention behind it is everything. Notice how the quality of your attention changes when your action is guided by an internal value, rather than by an external demanding obligation. This is how you reclaim your attention and your life from the checklist. So, here is a reflective question I'd like you to sit with. How much of your daily behavior is currently driven by conscious intention, and how much is driven by simply blind, unquestioned habit? Let that question stay with you. Notice throughout your day how often you act automatically, replying to a message without thinking, checking your phone just to fill a momentary gap, or saying yes when your body is quietly screaming no. Awareness is the absolute first step to transformation. Once you genuinely see your patterns, you can begin to choose differently. Think of this essential shift as moving from a clock mindset to a compass mindset. The clock measures productivity in hours and minutes. The compass measures it in meaning and direction. The clock constantly asks, "How much did you do today?" The compass only asks, "Did you move closer to what truly matters to you?" One keeps you running and chasing. The other keeps you anchored and aligned. Redefining productivity in this way doesn't necessarily mean doing less work overall. It means doing only what deeply aligns with who you are. It means replacing external pressure with quiet, internal clarity. It's a fundamental transformation from rigid control to deep connection, from frantic rushing to an internal rhythm. And once you start living this way, you realize something incredibly powerful. Your value was never in the boxes you ticked, but in the profound, intentional presence you bring to every single moment you live. Let's get very practical for a moment, because while all this talk of inner dialogue, being overdoing, and redefining achievement can feel inspiring, it can also feel very abstract. How do you actually, realistically, live without a total reliance on the to-do list in the middle of a busy, demanding life? The truth is, You absolutely do not need to create chaos or disorder to live more intentionally. Structure and spontaneity are not enemies. They can and should coexist beautifully when they are gently guided by awareness. It's less about tossing organization out the window, and much more about fundamentally reimagining the way you interact with your time, your tasks, and your energy levels. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and pausing before reaching for your phone or diving straight into work. Instead of the habitual question, "What must I accomplish today?" you ask, "What is the single most meaningful thing today?" That subtle shift, from checking off tasks to prioritizing deep meaning, changes the entire rhythm of your day. You might decide that today's theme is connection, and so you consciously invest more time in a deep, unrushed conversation with a colleague, a friend, or even yourself through reflective journaling. Or perhaps the theme is curiosity, and you purposefully allow yourself to explore a new idea, a new book, or a creative project without any immediate, suffocating goal in mind. The focus shifts completely from discrete, isolated actions to overarching, guiding intentions. This system then guides your daily choices without micromanaging every single minute. The list becomes utterly unnecessary because your theme acts as your internal compass. You can return to it whenever you feel slightly off track, not as a measure of success or failure, but as a gentle, internal reminder of your current, chosen focus. This approach cultivates deep mindfulness and greatly reduces the constant internal pressure to perform. Alex, let me give you a concrete example using the new character, Ilara. Ilara is a successful graphic designer. She used to live by an incredibly rigid, obsessive schedule. Every hour of her day was meticulously blocked out. 9 a.m. client email catch-up. 10 a.m. logo draft for Project Alpha. 1 p.m. social media content creation. She felt extremely efficient, but was also profoundly exhausted, perpetually running on a treadmill that had no end. One day, she decided to make a radical change. She kept a broad structure. Mornings for client work, afternoons for design, but she completely removed the rigid individual time blocks for every single task. Instead, she chose a theme for each day of the week. Monday, clarity, focus on the why of the work, not the how much. Tuesday, creation, deep, uninterrupted design work, allowing for spontaneous flow. Wednesday, connection, all meetings, networking, and deep listening conversations. Thursday, exploration, learning a new software tool, reading design blogs, pure research. Friday, integration, review, reflection, and setting the theme for the following week. On her creation day, she lingered over a complex logo design, allowing herself to experiment without the clock pressure. She discovered brilliant, imaginative solutions that she hadn't found in years. On her connection day, she let a team check-in conversation run long because it was producing genuine collaborative insight. By letting these themes guide her actions, instead of a relentless checklist, Ilara discovered a profound creativity, a deep sense of joy, and a burst of sustainable energy she hadn't felt in years. Crucially, she was still getting all of her essential work done. Her actions were no longer a reaction to a to-do list. They were a vibrant expression of her professional values and interests. This is the power of living by intention, not obligation. It's about replacing the rigid structure of check boxes with the fluid, gentle guidance of awareness. You can still achieve, still deliver, still grow, but the driving force is now purpose, presence, and alignment. instead of a constant external obligation. Alex's final call to action. My friends, if you have listened to this entire extended episode, you have successfully completed a very substantial B1 English Listening Practice Challenge. Well done! You have mastered vocabulary related to psychology, productivity, and personal transformation. But more importantly, you have heard a powerful truth. Life is not only about what we get done. It is about how fully, how consciously, how deeply we live. If you found this discussion, this idea of trading the clock for the compass, helpful, I have one simple request, your only call to action today. For the next 24 hours, do not write a single to-do list. Instead, write down just one word, intention. And whenever you feel lost or anxious about what to do next, simply look at that word and ask, how does my next action align with my intention for the day? Try it. Experience it. You may discover a freedom and clarity that no checklist could ever give you. Now, if you want to practice your English further, please do two things. First, subscribe to the English in Fluency channel so you don't miss our next lesson. Second, in the comments section below, don't write your to-do list. Instead, write just one word that will be your intention for tomorrow. Will it be joy, curiosity, peace, or focus? Let me know. Thank you for being here, for listening deeply, and for choosing to live with fluency and intention. I'm Alex, and I'll see you next time on English in Fluency.